It's time for me to introduce the first speaker. It's a pleasure to welcome Mats Ljungqvist from the Policy and Space Research Unit at DG GROW. And DG GROW is about internal market, industry, entrepreneurship, and SMEs. Mats Ljungqvist works with coordination of space research in Horizon 2020, and he has also been involved in the work of preparing the space work program. And before Mats began at the Commission, he has worked with R&D in speech interaction, that is speech recognition, speech synthesis, as well as dialogue systems. And he was at that time within the Telia Group here in Sweden. And Mats has also a doctorate from Tokyo University and a Master of Science degree from the Royal Institute of Technology, or KTH, here in Stockholm. So Mats will give us an overview of the space work program that was launched now in October this year, and the first upcoming deadlines are in March 2016. So this is really good time for you if you're considering to prepare an application. Mats will present in English, but since he's a Swedish speaking person, we will allow questions as well in Swedish if you prefer that. So, but I repeat that we take the questions after Mats' presentation. So please, Mats.
Okay, am I online? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kathleen, for this introduction and for introducing me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be here in Stockholm, which is my birthplace where I grew up. It's always nice to come back to beautiful Stockholm on a sunny autumn day like this. If the disturbance comes from me or... Okay, let's see. We'll see. I will start. We'll try to find my presentation. It should be coming up. Okay, better. Sorry for that. Katrin? Oh yeah, okay. Is there a way to see the bigger screen here as well? Or do I have it like that? It's fine like that. Okay, good. Next picture. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for slow start. So, I work in the European Commission. I've been working for the European Commission almost for 20 years, actually. 10 years in the ICT program, information technology, and about 8 years now in space research. But I still speak Swedish, so feel free to ask questions in Swedish after the presentation. I have to apologize already from beginning for a presentation which has far too many slides and far too much text. So I know my old professor would, be disgusted if he saw this, but this is the way it works in the Commission. The good point is that the presentations, I understand, will be made available afterwards, and it's like contains all the basic essential information, and in addition some links to further information. So I will go through just very briefly on Horizon 2020 what it is. Katrin already did that work, so I will be brief. Something about the space research in Horizon 2020 in general, but specifically on the work program for the coming 2 years, and some additional information at the end. So Horizon 2020 is a single program. It brings together a couple of different initiatives in FP7. There were separate programs for FP7 research aspects, the Competitiveness in Innovation Program, SIP, and the European Institute of Innovation and Technologies. These are all now bundled together in Horizon 2020. One should mention that part of the SIP program, the Competitiveness and Innovation program, is a separate program called COSME, which is specifically focusing on competitiveness for SMEs, but the technology intensive part of support for SMEs is in Horizon 2020. Of course, Horizon 2020 is meant to couple research and innovation, and focusing is on societal challenges. Focus on societal challenges means that a big part of the program is focused on that, and we saw that's one of the 3 pillars that were mentioned by Katrin. Sorry. The technologies, enabling technologies, also support societal challenges, and the pillar on more basic research is a little bit more freestanding, so to say. Another aspect of Horizon 2020 is that we have tried to make it simpler. It's a simplified access to the program. The procedures have been simplified. Hopefully now we're gradually going away from the complicated application procedures and project management of the past. This just shows the budget shares of the different parts of the program. So you see that there are 3 main parts and a couple of smaller ones. Societal challenges is the biggest one, about 30 billion over the 7 years. Industrial leadership, about 17 billion, and excellent science, about 25 billion. Excellent science with the ERC, which was introduced, I believe, in FP7 as a small test and was deemed to be a success. So it has grown in budget significantly in Horizon 2020. The other parts of excellent science is, as was described, future and emerging technologies, research infrastructures, and Marie Curie, which I now mention here again. It's very important, of course, because a research program is not a research program if it only focuses on solving today's problems. We have to prepare for solving future problems as well. So this is the more long-term, curiosity-driven research part of the program. It is also interesting for the space research community, because we have here support for certain research infrastructures related to space, networking of observatories, networking of researchers, addressing various aspects of space and astronomy. Marie Curie, obviously, mobility grants and things like that for researchers to work at different places, applicable to space-related as well as other activities. And the basic research also address research dealing with astrophysics, dealing with microgravity experiments on the space station and things like that. But these are bottom-up. It's when you apply in this area, with the exception of the FET, a part of FET, it's all bottom-up. When you submit a proposal for something on space science or space research, you compete with health and transport and everything else in this world. So it's quite competitive. Industrial leadership, again, I don't want to repeat what Katrin already said, but just to stress that space is indeed included here, but it's slightly different, I would say, from nanotechnologies, biotechnology, because space is more like a user of these areas. We need advanced manufacturing and processing materials. We use ICT in all the satellites and space systems. So space is kind of a user of this and a provider of solutions for the societal challenges. That means that some of the space actors actually very easily can become involved in projects that are funded from the ICT program or from biotech or from manufacturing. For societal challenges, the 7 here, it's the same thing. Many of them depend on space data. So for we can mention energy, transport, climate-related research, secure societies. Here, clearly, satellite navigation, Earth observation are part of the solution in many cases. So it's important to know, and I will give examples later, that those of you who are in the space business or space research area, don't look just at the space part of the program, look at the other parts as well. On simplification, we now have a single set of rules. So before we had different model contracts for different parts of the program. We have now one funding rate for one project. Before we used to have different for different types of participants. Now it depends on the project. Either we fund 100% of the total eligible cost or 70%. Indirect costs, there's a flat rate of 25% of the direct costs. So this has simplified the financial management, let's say, of the program, both for the Commission and for the applicants. The evaluation criteria for the proposal's evaluation are also kind of streamlined: excellence, impact, and implementation. Now, there are some variations on these, of course, depending if your proposal is more research-oriented or more applied. The interpretation of those criteria will, of course, need to be adapted to the situation. There are some new forms of funding which are now included in Horizon 2020, and we're starting to experiment with those. You will see that. Pre-commercial procurement, inducement prizes. Prizes are used, of course, in the space business, you know, but those Lunar X Prize and things like that. So it's quite interesting for us. And then there are some dedicated loan and equity instruments as well for the more commercially oriented type of work. International participation is still there in the sense that it's still Horizon 2020, like predecessor programs is an open program. It's open to the world. Every country can participate, with maybe just one or two exceptions, I think, which are normal. Some countries which are in war or things like that, we cannot easily cooperate with. But basically, it's open to the rest of the world. In many cases, we can even provide funding to countries outside of EU. But there is a little more emphasis now on reciprocity. We want to use the openness of the program in order to try to, let's say, stimulate other countries to open up their programs in a similar way. So it's a little bit of research diplomacy involved here. Okay, simpler rules for grants. I don't want to go into detail. We want to make it easier using the participants' own accounting practices. Has been said many times in previous programs, but now it's apparently becoming a reality. Fewer but better targeted audits and controls, and improved IPR management. Of course, this is a little bit complicated, so we don't have the time to go into the detail. SMEs participation and support to SMEs is very important. It's growing importance. We need to address employment situation in Europe, and SMEs are, of course, key to the solution. Future big companies are SMEs today, or hopefully new companies also starting. It has been said, it's a target, it's a hard target, that at least 20% of the total budget of Horizon 2020, with the exception of the excellent research part, is going to be spent by SMEs. And this was 15% in the previous program. And in FP7, we managed, I think, overall to come to 16% or so. 20%, of course, is quite ambitious. How to get there? One way is to simplify, as we already explained, try to make contracts easier, IPR rules clearer, financial management simpler. But there's also a dedicated SME instrument, which was already mentioned. I will give some more detail on that, which is a way for SME, where only SMEs are eligible for funding. And there's a choice of the applicant to go alone as a single SME, or to join up with one or two or three, several other SMEs. And many of the applications are single SME applications. And then there are some other activities as well. We could also have SME-friendly topics in our space, for example, or in other areas, which we have had in 2014 and 15. Okay, so international cooperation, just a few words on that. It's of course still important. It's crucial. We want Horizon 2020 to be at world-class level, and we need in many cases also to involve non-European participants in order to really to gain access to knowledge and information, and to be competitive in the world. So it's a principle of general openness. Countries can apply to be associated. We have a number of associated countries like in the past. Typical examples are Norway and Iceland and Switzerland, which is only partially associated for the moment, Israel, and the candidate countries like Turkey and so on, and several Balkan countries as well are associated, meaning they can participate on the same basis as an EU member state. They pay into the program and they can get money out of the program. And in addition to that, we can have specific activities, specific measures. We can in the work program say that we welcome international participation in this and that topic, and therefore we can also have participants from outside EU. 2014 call has already been of course launched, and the projects have been launched, I should say. 2015 call deadline was April this year. The first projects contracts have been signed, and all of them will be signed before the end of the year. So we will already now start to have some statistics, some knowledge on what has been funded. There is a link here which you don't see on the slide, but you will have on the electronic version that you will get. There is, and through participant portal you can also find some first results. These are aggregated across Horizon 2020, so it's not specific for space. To see which types of projects have been funded, which countries are most active, and so on, which type of applicants, what is the SME result. For the moment, we seem to have an SME participation of, in budget terms, of about well over 20%. I think we're at 23, 24%, something like that, for the first 2 years in the space area. I don't know what the global situation is. Now, to go to space specifically, this slide is here to remind us that Horizon 2020 space is important, but it's not by far not the biggest project funded by the EU budget. Copernicus Earth Observation Program and Galileo EGNOS satellite navigation are operational programs with their own budget. As operational programs, of course, most of the budget is spent on building satellites, launching satellites, and operating the system. There is some money also dedicated to improvements of this generation of activities, so some technology development. But the future generations will rely initially at least on funding from Horizon 2020. And altogether, this is a budget of about 12 billion euro over 7 years. So it's very significant. Now, of course, in addition to this, we have national programs and ESA programs, which are very large. Of course, we should be careful of double counting here, because Copernicus and EGNOS is big ESA programs with funding from the EU. In the case of Galileo EGNOS, all the funding comes from the EU. In case of Copernicus, it's still mixed ESA and EU funding. I already mentioned that 2014-15 call have been closed. 2014 projects have been running for almost a year. 2015 projects are just starting now or early next year. In 2016-17 work program was published in October, with the first deadline in March next year. So it's getting close now. The 2017 part will have a deadline around the same time next year. And it's all available online. And to the work program, one should consult, depending now on the topics you're interested in, one should also consult some additional guidance document, which I will come back to. So European Commission is, let's say, politically responsible for managing the program, for preparing the work program, for following up the program. But the actual implementation in most cases, or in our case at least for space, is done by agencies. So we have the Research Executive Agency who manages the calls for Earth observation, competitiveness, and protection of space assets. You will see later. The European GNSS Agency manages the call for the Galileo, EGNOS part of the program, and the Executive Agency for SMEs, SME, manages the SME Instrument calls. I think, and not just the calls, they also manage the projects that come out of the call as funded, and those last then for 2, 3, 4 years with annual reviews and contract amendments and payments and so on. So it's a whole machinery to run hundreds of projects or thousands of projects like that. The projects that have been selected for funding and that have been signed are then some information is available on the web. So both REA and the GSA agency have links on their websites. This example shown here is for the Research Executive Agency, where you can find at least fact sheet type of information on each action, abstract, consortium, composition, start date, budget, and so on, and contact names to the coordinator. This is important if one is preparing a proposal. It's important to have a look at what's already been funded, because we don't necessarily fund things twice if it can be avoided. Sometimes it can be, of course, justified, but it's good to see what other people are doing already. So this is available here. Most of these projects will also, of course, run their own project websites with more detailed information about their projects. Now, to go to the next level of detail, the 2016-17 work program. It's available on the participant portal in a kind of web browsable fashion. If you go through to the reference documents, you will also find a PDF version of the actual space part. But as I said earlier, also look at the other parts depending on what you're interested in. Across all of Horizon 2020 program, the structure of the call descriptions are the same. So we have a work program with calls for proposals. Under each call for proposal, there are usually a number of topics, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9 different topics, sometimes with their own predefined budget, estimated budget. Each topic is then described as a specific challenge, which outlines the problem, the context, and then the scope, which more in detail says what is the delimitations, let's say, of what we're going to fund this time, and the expected impact, which is, as the word says, what kind of change, what kind of impact is hoped for if these projects are successful. So that makes it relatively easy, I think, to navigate the program, even if you look at other topics. Participant portal, I think, has been mentioned. It's quite easy to navigate. You click space in the calls for proposals. You can select if you have closed calls, currently open calls, or future calls. In 2016-17, we have in the space program the following 4 blocks, as you can see. Main blocks of activities, and most of them are calls. So 3 of them have calls for proposals open. So it's the EGNSS, covering Galileo and EGNOS. A call for proposal is not indicated here, but it's in 2017 only. In 2016, there is no call. So in 2017, on applications of EGNSS. And then there are some other actions which is also specified in the work program, in the second half of the work program, which are not calls for proposals, but other things. in this case, procurement actions addressing the evolution of EGNOS mission and service infrastructure, mission and service services of EGNOS. And then there is not a call for proposal, not a procurement, but a delegation agreement with between European Commission and the European Space Agency on the evolution of the infrastructure for GNSS. So basically, this is Horizon 2020 funded development of next generation of Galileo. So satellite navigation for the future, 10 years, 15 years down the line. And this is managed by ESA and with a budget from EU. So here we have a whole machinery in place with colleagues in a different directorate dealing directly with the ESA colleagues in the area of infrastructure, so next generation of satellites for Galileo and everything around that. For Earth observation, we will have calls for proposals both in 16 and 17 on downstream applications, evolution of existing Copernicus services, and specific areas dealing perhaps with technologies related to Earth observation, in this case, big data. The Compet call covers various technologies, critical technologies, strategic research clusters. I will give more details in the coming slides on this, and including some other actions related to a prize on low-cost access to space and some ESA support to these activities. Finally, there is the space surveillance and tracking support framework, where there is a financial support from Horizon 2020 to help member states to build up or to, let's say, organize a European space surveillance and tracking activity based on existing assets, but we also provide some funding for improving the performance and planning for new assets, new sensors. In addition to this, SME Instrument and Fast Track to Innovation, which is a pilot action which I will describe. This slide is there just to give the order of magnitude of the different building blocks. As you can see, for 2016-17, EGNOS has the biggest budget, Earth observation and Compet, and there we have SST with a relatively smaller budget, SME Instrument, and some other small activities at the end. This is just to give the proportions. I don't think I need to spend a lot of time, but as I said, we have research and innovation actions that funded 100% in principle of the direct costs. This is for the more upstream research. Innovation actions which are near the market, near a commercial market, I should say, is funded at a lower rate, naturally, 70%. And then we have some support activities and coordination funded at 100%, plus a little bit of coverage of overheads, indirect costs. Okay, so then to go into the various areas for the calls. Earth observation, as I said, satellite navigation, there is no call in 2016. So in Earth observation, we have a call in 2016 with a deadline in March, addressing Copernicus. Let's see now. Okay. Addressing downstream applications. The first slide is here to give the context where Copernicus as a program, you may be very familiar with that, perhaps not all of you. Copernicus is the Earth observation program of the EU. Already 2 satellites are flying and giving data. The 3rd satellite will be launched in January, it seems now, and several other satellites are coming on. These are the Sentinel satellites. In addition to that, we have other missions where we buy data. These are the so-called contributing missions. So the flow of satellite data is already there. 6 main thematic areas are addressed by the services, so land monitoring, marine, atmosphere, emergency management, security, and climate change. Security and climate change are not that yet operational, but they are coming. These services are available free, and the data, direct access to satellite data is also possible and free. So this is the main thing of Copernicus, is full, free and open access. It's not limited to Europe even, so it's available over the world. There are slightly different ways of accessing data, more or less privileged, so to say. Some are close to real time for some of the services where this is necessary. It's all described in the Copernicus website, which you will have links to down on the slide, and this can be Googled very easily. Okay, so to support all this, we do in 2016, like in 2014-15, a dedicated support to downstream applications. So these are applications which are not, or services which are not directly linked to the operational Copernicus services, but which are more targeted to specific user needs, and who may even have then a commercial future. So here these are innovation actions. They are supposedly market near, and should target a commercial service platform, as is mentioned here. Customers, potential users need, of course, to be involved in the consortium. Project size about 1 to 2 million. As a second activity, we are introducing one of the new financing tools for downstream services for public authorities. This is a so-called pre-commercial procurement. So what is this? It is money put on the table by the Commission for public authorities in member states, regions, to come together and to procure services based on on Copernicus data. So to launch demand-driven innovation actions in order to customize or to adapt Copernicus information, to Copernicus data, to address needs. We don't know exactly what these needs are. We will have to see, but there are several, let's say, configurations already having quite advanced ideas of this. If possible, one could couple this to the European Structural and Investment Fund, ESIF, which is linked to the regions and the regional support from the EU budget, where this is possible. This slide gives more detail on the pre-commercial procurement. I don't think we have time to go into all the details, but the basic principle is that we are giving funding to a group of procurers, a buyers group, who together will do jointly such a procurement. Should be at least 2 independent legal entities from 2 different member states or associated states, and they have to also put money on the table in order to do this. EU contribution can be up to 90% of the total eligible costs. This is a way to try to, educate local regional authorities to make use of Copernicus system. So we try to stimulate that by providing some funding to get started, so to say. We'll see how this is a little bit of an experiment. We'll see how it comes out. 3 million is not a lot of money at this stage, but as a test, it's intended as a pilot, so to say. And then we have a third activity, which is also looking at Copernicus, but the Copernicus services and the future evolution of those services. Here one has to link somehow to the existing services to understand their needs and to see how these services can evolve in the future. In order to have better background information on the current services, there is a guidance document available. It's available on the participant portal as well as on our website, which explains the research needs identified by the operational services in Copernicus. So the way to go here then is to of course consult this document and to consult people who are involved in the services, who you might know through your networks, and work together with these to see how one can address the issues of, because these Copernicus services are, of course, not fixed forever. They need to evolve with the needs and with the possibilities given by new satellites and new sensors. This is just recapping. 2016, we had these activities that were explained. It's about 22 million. In 2017, we have just one activity, downstream applications, but also a technology-oriented big data. We call it big data shift. So this is in order to address the situation where we have a much larger, much richer flow of data coming from these Earth observation systems. And we need to somehow deal with that. And of course, one buzzword right now in the ICT community is big data. So big data is trying to manage all this in terms of repositories, in terms of communication, in terms of processing, data mining, all these things. And then under the Compet call, we should mention also, I will come to that, there is a competitiveness in Earth observation mission technologies. So it's a technology-oriented topic which addresses new sensors and these kind of things. So altogether for 2017, then a slightly larger amount than in 2016. Now this slide wants to, I want to stress the fact that a lot of Earth observation related activity, not necessarily Copernicus, but also Copernicus, are also being addressed in other parts of the program, as has already been repeated several times. Under Societal Challenge 2, Blue Growth, Sustainable Food Security. Under Societal Challenge 5, Climate Action. Under our own Compet call and under SME Instrument, there are a number of activities relating to Earth observation. Altogether, in 2016-17, is 58 million euro available for Earth observation related activities outside the space program. So it's bigger than us, in terms of Earth observation. So this is very important to keep in mind. Okay, moving on to the next topic, hoping that I don't tire you too much with detail. I will not go into the details. The details are in the work program. There's no need for me to repeat that. I just want to stress a few key points. This is the whole idea, and this is why the number of slides is unfortunately a bit too many. Compet 1, as in the previous years, addresses the European non-dependence and competitiveness. These are a number of, let's say, agreed list of critical technologies for space that should be addressed somehow in the research and innovation funding. It's a list that has been agreed with the European Commission, European Space Agency and European Defence Agency, has been also through a round of consultations with member states. And then from that list we have picked a number of areas, in this case 6 areas, which are particularly urgent to address. And I will, although it's my background in this area, I will not go into the details because it will take too much time. But it's, as you can see, a number of technology areas which are quite specific, but where we don't necessarily detail the solution. More information is found in this guidance document, which is an excerpt then from the document that comes out of this joint task force between EU, ESA and EDA. And it's renewed regularly. And here you find a bit more information than about each of those technology lines that were addressed in this call. In Compet 2, we have now a call for 2016 on maturing satellite communication technologies to demonstrate in relevant environment systems, technologies, component systems and subsystems for satellite communication. This is on higher TRL, not very high, but targeting TRL 6. Targeting TRL 6, we can discuss what it means, but it means that they should be either the work itself funded targeting TRL 6, going to TRL 6, or it could be going to TRL 5 with an indication of how to go to TRL 6 at this, in the next step. This is left to the proposers to explain And of course, it's then up to the evaluators to assess how plausible this is. And here you can see a number of technology areas that should be addressed then by the proposals in this area. This is we got the question several times. TRL6 is quite high. Shouldn't it be an innovation action? But we have remained with it was discussed in the program committee, I should admit. But we have remained with the research and innovation action, which gives 100% funding, because this is still quite a bit to the market, to the commercial market, possibly. We will have to see. But we thought it was still justified to keep this as a research and innovation action. Now, that was critical technologies. It was a specific topic on satellite navigation, on satellite communication. Now we have two topics which are addressing electric propulsion and space robotics, and they are in the form of what we call strategic research clusters. I don't know if you have been following this program. In 2014, we launched this idea of strategic research cluster by opening a call for coordination activity. Now we have two coordination activities. One is called EPIC for electric propulsion, and another PERASPERA for space robotics, where space agencies have joined forces under the coordination of European Space Agency. So we have a coordination action which basically involves then a critical mass, say, of European expertise in the area. And they have produced, in the year they have been active, roadmaps and guidelines related to these topics. And they have provided input to the Commission for the work program text. And the work program text you see now is 90%, I would say, material coming out of these two projects. For space electric propulsion, there are two strands. One is more incremental developments of well-established technologies, Hall effect thrusters, gridded ion engines, and high-efficiency multi-stage plasma thrusters. So these are already groups in Europe working on these areas. And the idea is to fund one project in each of these three. And then we have a second part of the call which address what we call disruptive technologies, which could be a new ways of dealing with this, addressing, for instance, transversal technologies for disruptive systems, electric propulsion systems, or devoted to specific disruptive thrusters, EP thrusters. So this is the perhaps more innovative aspect, one can say. Again, this is a call which is quite complex, or topic which is quite complex, cannot be described in 1 or 2 pages in the work program only. There is a separate guidance document to explain the context and how these projects coming out of the research cluster should fit together, because they have to fit together somehow. In terms of the 3 incremental technologies, they are quite separate. But there will be some common technologies for validation and evaluation. And it's all going to be then kind of coordinated by this EPIC coordination activity running in parallel. There will be some element of IPR sharing also between these projects. For the robotic technologies strategic research cluster, there's a similar picture. We will have 6 lines or building blocks in this call. These are what we call basic building blocks for space robotics. So these are 6 elements which are necessary to put in place, and they need to be kind of interconnected. And then future calls in space robotics will build on these technologies and to build applications then. So it's a space robotic control operating system, autonomy framework, common data fusion framework, inspection data suite, modular interfaces for handling and payload, for validation and testing. The hope is that we will get out of this call 6 separate projects that address these areas and that fit together, which is not so easy. This slide is trying to explain a little bit how it should fit together, but I will leave it, I think, for you to study the background document, those who are interested. But the main thing is that in the next call, we will address 2 application tracks. One is the so-called orbital track, where we see possible demonstrations in the future of on-orbit servicing, possibly debris removal application, but this left, we will have to see that in a later call. The later call will come probably in 2018 or 2019. And then there's a planetary track which addresses the familiar issue of planetary rovers. We have seen Curiosity on Mars. So technologies that are adapted to that type of application, which we think build still on the same common building blocks. Okay, so that covered the strategic research clusters on electric propulsion and robotics. We have the small topic on scientific instrumentation. So these are instruments in the context of mission payloads for science purposes. The proposal may cover different stages, as mentioned here, from concepts to breadboarding. And the idea here is not to, let's say, this is, of course, there is a well-established ESA activity in this field of scientific missions, which is very successful, whereby PI teams get together to make the particular instruments for the missions, and ESA makes sure that the mission is prepared and launched. What we think is that it's a necessity or a need to come in early. So this is the idea here is that we should provide some seed funding for new ideas, new types of instruments that could come up for future missions, not for the already planned missions necessarily. And that it should make sense that we could have multinational teams working on this, while in the traditional scheme is basically a national PI team for each instrument. So we will see how this works. The funding is very small for the moment. It's only 3 million, so maybe we can have 1 or 2 projects. But if this has been asked for quite a lot, and we will see how the response is, and based on that we will, draw some conclusions for the future. But basically it's trying to support an already quite successful European, let's say, mechanisms for these science missions. Okay, this is a summary of the situation then for 16 and 17 in the competitiveness of European space sector, both addressing in this case science and technology. So for 2016 is about 65 million, 2017 slightly less. But we should also mention that we have a prize in 2017, which we estimate to be about 4 million, which will be announced later, but it's already in the planning, so to say. Satellite navigation then. So satellite navigation, we don't have any call in 2016, but there are other actions. I will just quickly recap. This is all, of course, available in the work program. Mission and service related R&D. This is a small procurement by the Commission to address the future in missions and services, innovative concepts, the PRS, and the search and rescue service, which is going to be implemented in Galileo. There is a similar one then for EGNOS in 2016. Yeah. For the main thrust, let's say these two, I think there's no budget indicated here, but the main thrust budget-wise, of course, is on the ESA delegation agreement to ESA for the GNSS evolution, for the next generation of Galileo. This is not 52 million to be consumed by ESA, of course. Most of this money will be then available through tenders, through ITTs at ESA, published in the usual way, and we will publish as well on the Commission level to address, to start the work on, which has already started, but to continue the work on the next generation of Galileo. The EGEP program at ESA is already addressing this until next year, I think, early next year. Horizon 2020 money is already starting to flow in this area from this year on. So it will be R&D actions through procurement, grants and prizes, and also ESA technical activities internally, plus the ESA management, of course. Summarizing the satellite navigation part, in 2016, some other actions and ESA delegation agreement of 48 million, and in 2017, same. Now I see, yeah, same thing for other actions, but also call for proposal addressing transport, mass market, professional applications, and awareness raising. About 33 million. The applications for GNSS in the planning is that this gradually decreasing a little bit every year in terms of funding. It was most in the 2014-15 work program, slightly less in 16-17, and slightly less again in 18-19-20. So it's a kind of front loading. A small other activity, an important activity on space surveillance and tracking. I don't know how familiar you are. There was a decision in 2014 by the Parliament and Council on establishing a framework for space surveillance and tracking. So, as you know, many of you, Europe depends, like most of the world depends on the information that we get from the United States on potential collisions between satellites and space debris and all these things. So the ambition is that Europe starts building up a system which is not perhaps at the level of the US system, but that could contribute to the picture, could be complementary, and that we build on European capacities that already exist. Today, they already exist primarily in Germany and France, and that we also provide some funding for new sensors and for upgrading of the existing sensors. So these are the two strands, SST services using existing assets, building services related to collision warnings, to launch service, so make sure that you don't launch into space debris, and uncontrolled re-entry predictions, so to say. So we know that if some big space debris is falling down over Stockholm or Brussels, we should know in advance. So this is a networking activity, building on existing installations, and then we fund some research activities related to new sensors, new radars and telescopes, and upgrade of existing ones. I will not go into the implementation details, which are quite complicated, but I will say that there is a consortium of member states already that have manifested interest and submitted the first proposals. And these are the big five space countries in Europe. So it's France and Germany, UK, Spain, and Italy. And there is an opening for other countries to join. As soon as everything has been a little bit more established, other countries will be welcome to join, and there will be a process for that next year. So if Sweden is interested, should keep an eye open on that. The level of funding is what is indicated here in 2016. It's a small funding from the Horizon 2020 Space on the framework. There is additional funding coming from Horizon 2020 security theme, and there is additional funding. The big chunk of funding comes from the Galileo and Copernicus programs. And overall, this framework program for support SST for the networking and the service provision is at the level of 70 million until 2020. And then we see here that improving performance of SST, so these are the upgraded sensors and new assets, 8 million respectively 15 million, and projected to be funded also in the coming 3 years after 2017. I think that covers now what I wanted to cover most essentially. This is the space part of the program with strong hints that there are also other parts of Horizon 2020 which fund space-related activities. If there's a little bit of time, I will also give a few slides, a few explanations of the SME instrument. The SME instrument is an important part of the strategy of supporting SMEs, to help SMEs actually improve the employment in Europe. This is, I mean, the underlying, of course, logic. We have about 15% funding for SMEs in FP7. The goal is to reach 20% in Horizon 2020 to go to SMEs, 20% of the budget. A big part of that, the major part of that, will be SMEs participating in normal projects in collaboration with academia, with bigger companies and so on. So this is still the main part, and in the space field, probably very important part. But the SME instrument is going to be, it's funded at 7%. 7% of our SME, of our space budget is devoted to this SME instrument. And the SME instrument is, sorry, the SME instrument is built in 3 phases. Those of you who are familiar with the United States situation maybe know about the Small Business Innovation Grants, SBIR, in the US, which has been quite successful over a long time. It's similar. There's a phase 1 where the applicant can send in a very brief, 6-10 pages application, just giving the outline of the concept, the business plan, the idea. And if they are selected, they will be invited to start working on it. There will be a contract, of course, and they will, upon delivery, get a lump sum payment of 50,000 euro. This is typically maybe a 1-year activity, maybe 2-year, to explore a business idea. That could lead then to a phase 2 application, which is more a normal innovation project running over a couple of years with up to 2.5 million, but sometimes less, funding of one single SME or several SMEs. It's not mandatory to be part of phase 1 in order to apply to phase 2. One can go directly to phase 2 if you already have a viable business plan. But the big news here for the EU framework program is that a single SME can apply. So this is very important. No need to build a consortium with your worst enemies or best friends, unless you want to. Yeah. On the other hand, it restricts SMEs cannot use this SME instrument in order to collaborate with a bigger company or with the university. That's not possible. They could have a collaboration outside the SME instrument, obviously, but funded from the SME instrument is only possible to fund SMEs. The last phase, phase 3, is a non-funded phase, but it's a service given to successful phase 2 participants to support, to improve the concept, to find to network, to find funding opportunities in the more business angel and world of things, and innovation funding that comes after. So this is all I wanted to say about the SME instrument. I think there will be some more information about that after the break. The Fast Track to Innovation pilot, I just wanted to mention, it's a 2-year pilot, 2015-2016, that was inserted in the late stage of the planning of Horizon 2020, in order to test the idea if we can go faster. Now, the simplification of Horizon 2020 is already allowing us to go a bit faster. The time to grant from the deadline of the call to the actual signature of the grant agreement is now down to 8 months, and sometimes shorter. It used to be at least a year. So we're already doing some progress. Fast Track to Innovation is devoted to even faster. Should be a 6-month time to grant. And the idea is that we should have simpler, smaller consortia. It's limited number of participants, limited funding, and therefore it should be relatively easier to reach, to go through the granting process. the limitation here, if I see, is at least 3 partners, maximum 5 partners. But otherwise we follow the normal rules of the game, which means we have to have at least the minimum number of member states and involved. And then we have implementation up to 2 years. So the idea is to go faster from idea to the market. Now this has been quite successful, but not for the space area, unfortunately. So in the first cutoff date, I should mention this is a continuously open call, like the SME instrument, with cutoff dates. So you can send a proposal anytime. In the first cutoff date in 2014, there was no space proposal at all. In the second cutoff date, which was in the October-November, we had 3 proposals addressing space. None was selected. So here there is opportunity. It seems like the most successful ones are consortia which include big industry. So far, if we see from other areas. So maybe this is an opportunity for bigger companies and SMEs to actually work together. We will see. This is a pilot, as the word indicates, meaning after 2016. We will not fund it in 2017. We will start a small evaluation round to see if it worked, how it worked, how it can be improved, and how it possibly can be implemented later on, probably in the next framework program. But maybe it's an indication that space industry could use this tool. Hasn't been very much used. The SME instrument and fast track to innovation. This gives the funding level in 2016-17, about 11-12 million for the SME instrument, and 3.4 for the fast track to innovation. The SME instrument will increase in terms of funding in the coming 3 years after that. I mean, in order for us to reach 7% of the total, we have to go up to 8% in 18, 19, and 20. And the space budget for 2018, 19, and 20 is likely to be slightly larger per year than it was so far. So we will go up to 15, 16 million probably per year for the SME instrument. This is the only one I wanted to show, almost. Again, reminder of the deadline. It's soon, 3rd of March 2016. And for the Earth observation and Compet call, for the 2017, we have Galileo as well. And there is also in Compet here a call on space weather, a topic on space weather, which used to be under the Protec call. So these are the 2 calls in the current work program. We have had a number of info days. Some of you might have been in Brussels in November. And there will be another day, that information event that was planned for November, which was cancelled due to the security situation in Brussels. So we will have postponed it to the second half of January on access to finance. And this will address issues linked to the so-called EFSI, European Fund for Strategic Investment, which is part of the Juncker Commission initiative to try to boost employment and growth in Europe, where Horizon 2020 had to contribute a lot of budget. So we will see here how the space community can work to recover some of that funding through this new scheme called EFSI, and which could be suitable for space-related activities, we think. Maybe not so much for research, more development. Okay, I think that covers what I wanted to say. So there are some links, and the slides will be made available.
So thank you, Mats. I would like to thank you for your very extensive presentation. You will get the slides, as Mats already told you. It's time for some questions, and I think anyone from the audience sort of volunteers to start. You're most welcome.
Hello. An addendum that may be of interest. Outside the specific space program, there is one SME Inst that is targeted at involving more SMEs in space-related activities. I think it's SME and Inst 4. That is quite a short deadline. I think that's actually end of January, beginning of February, if I understand correctly, and that may not be accurate. So any comments on that?
Yeah, I try to cover that very quickly on this slide here. This is the SME Inst. So so we had already a number of deadlines in 2014 and 15, the cutoff dates in 2014 and 15, and the space has been quite relatively successful in 2014 a little bit less, but 2015 has taken up quite well, and there are a number of very interesting activities going on there. And as you said, I think the next deadline is probably early next year. I don't know the exact date here, I'm sorry. But the previous deadline was end of November, mid-November. Yeah. So, no, this is definitely something to look at for single SMEs or for several SMEs together to address. But the key here is this is not a research project, research activity as the normal, so to say, if we can say normal calls that we have in the space area. This is very much dedicated to develop a product, a service that has a market. So a business plan, all these things are extremely important here. There are many excellent proposals in the SME instrument that gets nowhere. And several, especially in the space area, there were many nice, interesting technology proposals that unfortunately, it's the wrong call for that. Yeah. So it really needs to, the business aspect of this, the marketable aspect of this is key. Of course, it has to be also something interesting technically. But, yeah.
And if I could add something there, I mean, the main message is as well to get help. We will hear later on, Stefan Dahlhem will present sort of the help that is available. So please use sort of the help that is free of charge and available. So in Vinnova and Tillväxtverket are investing quite a lot in this support office for free of charge help for SMEs. So I think we take another question.
The SST activities that you mentioned, are they in parallel to what's going on with ESA, or are they part? How well connected are they to the ESA activities?
Okay, that's a very good question. So ESA has a relatively large program called SSA, Space Situational Awareness, which in the first half of its program, the first incarnation included space surveillance and tracking, SST, space weather, and near-Earth objects, so asteroid defense, so to say. In the second incarnation of this program, the SST element is very small at ESA. The major member states who were involved in that, I mean, it's mainly France and Germany to be concrete, but also some other countries have interest. But they basically were more interested in a let's say in a collaboration between themselves. They didn't want to go through the ESA system at the time. I don't know what the situation is now. Basically, the idea was to go to the Commission instead and see if Commission could be catalyzer to make these countries work together, and not just work together between those 2 or 5 countries who are most interested right now, but to provide a service at the European level, or services at the European level, also for the other countries. I mean, for the satellite industry, it's very important to have anti-collision warnings and to not be only relying on the United States, which is, of course, we are good friends with the United States, and this program is a way to also, let's say, intensify the collaboration between Europe and the United States in this area. But for the moment, I think it's well delineated in that sense that SST is primarily managed by the EU. At this moment, I think ESA is probably running studies in the course of their normal programs, and maybe there's also a study or 2 in SSA, I think. But their main focus right now is on space weather services and applications, and where we also have a few research activities going on in the framework program. But this is the situation, I think, for the moment. Thank you.
So, some more questions from the audience?
You said that there was some statistics on the calls that already had started and they are closed and so on, and but they were sort of the overall Horizon 2020. Can you say anything briefly about the space calls? Were they answering what you asked for? What was the quality and things like that?
Okay, yes, thank you for asking that question, because I wanted to say a few things about that as well. We are right now, since the the second call just closed, and we have signed almost all the grants. We are in a position now to do that work, and I think by the early next year we will come out with some statistics. It will already be discussed a little bit at the next program committee meeting before Christmas, but the idea is to come out with some more information related to space. What one can say for the moment is that we have relatively good SME participation, 22%, 23, or 20, something like that. We have overall, in terms of the calls, I exclude now the money that goes to ESA and to SST, but for the calls, about 50% participation of industry, and the rest is by public authorities, by research establishment, and by universities. So it is probably to be in the leadership in enabling and industrial technologies a little bit low on the industrial side, perhaps. But I think space is a little bit special in the sense that we have already a mechanism for industrial cooperation in Europe through ESA. So, we'll see how that. But I think it's a relatively well-balanced picture in terms of that. When it comes to coverage of the work program, it's maybe a big question to answer now, but it's relatively good. We had a big disappointment in Compet 1, critical technologies in 2015, where not all the areas were addressed. Maybe we are too specific. So we have to draw these kind of conclusions from this exercise.
So could I ask a follow-up question on that? Because some of the topics, the sort of success rates were quite low.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the compete topics in the first run, they were quite popular. If you talk about, I guess the question also dealt with the success rate of proposals as well. Will you sort of look at that when you're sort of doing the next work program? I mean, now there's this sort of work continuing in the spring. Starting to prepare for the next round of calls as well. That's right.
The next work programs will start to be prepared next year. Yes, indeed. Of course, success rate. I mean, it has many names. Success rate, over subscription. There are a number of topics. We have some topics which are a little bit undersubscribed, perhaps, and then we have to look at why. This is maybe because we are, again, too prescriptive, too detailed. We need to be a bit more open. Some of the but we are a little bit more concerned with a high oversubscription in some areas. Like we had very high subscription on the science data exploitation, on the low TRL, interestingly enough, low TRL bottom up, and some of the Earth observation topics, downstream services in 2014 at least. So what one has to see there, of course, is an indication that there is a need for funding, but one also has to look at the strategic considerations, what is important to address at a certain time. So a high oversubscription, low success rate usually goes together. Could be an indication that the call topic is not well formulated, it's too open. Could also be an indication that there's a need for a lot more funding there, because I mean it's a market kind of indication. So we'll have to see what kind of conclusions are drawn from this. Again, this is something we work together with the member states through the program committee and with other stakeholders. And we will start now. I can just take the opportunity to mention next year a round of consultations with not just with member states representatives, but also with industry, with academia, and we're planning to have 1 or 2 workshops over a couple of days to address specific topics in the area. And we always welcome unsolicited input as well from large industry. Of course, they are always sending us papers of what they think we should fund. Eurospace, as you know, as an umbrella organization for space-related industries, also they send their big lists. So there are big lists. Some member states like France and Germany, they have the big lists of things that we should fund. So there's no shortage of ideas. There's a matter of finding the right balance.
So sorry to interrupt. I think we take a final question, and then there's time for coffee.
Good.
Okay, I have a question on Compet 2 and the specific topics, like how were they selected and who were part of the working group? Is it possible to get that information?
Compet 2 in which year?
Or now for 2016 or 2016.
So we can quickly.
You have the U14, U18 on the DC. You said also that.
Is it Compet 1, you mean?
Yeah, Compet
This
1, sorry.
Okay, yeah. Yes, well, the team who puts this together, that's a team from the Commission, European Space Agency, and European Defence Agency. I mean, the names, there's no secret. If you want, I can give. And they are, again, channeled through. But they are linked to, quite strongly linked to the activity also at ESA on technology harmonization. So we work with these people in order to see what is suitable to be addressed by the Horizon 2020 program and what is most urgently needed to be addressed. Some of the things on the list are addressed by Galileo, are addressed in the ESA programs. Also EDA has some money to address some of these areas. So it's a balance to find. And then, of course, there's always a lot of discussion about this because they are quite detailed, and some people think that this is not important, it's already been done, it's already available, and there's also some commercial interests in some of these areas for sure. So it's a delicate process. That's why we try not to decide ourselves. We try to keep a broader view together with ESA and EDA and member states.
So thank you, Mats. I think we need some coffee now.
Yes.